beg you, don't do this.
Have you ever been thrown out of your own house just because you couldn't get pregnant? She stood in the rain, clutching a small bag, thrown out by her husband after 7 years of marriage, blamed for not having children. "You're barren," he said as he shut the door behind her. But here's the shocking truth. It wasn't her, it was him. After a health check, she learned she was perfectly fine, and from that moment, her life flipped. This story is based on true events, and it's been a beacon of hope for thousands of women silenced by cruel labels. You'll see how she went from rock bottom to owning a thriving food business, found love with a man who saw her worth, and gave birth to triplets after being told she could never be a mother. And the twist? On her ex-husband's wedding day, she arrived in a Rolls-Royce, glowing in gold, holding hands with her 3 boys. In front of a stunned crowd, his fiancée called off the wedding because he was the one who couldn't father children. If you've ever been judged for not having kids, this story is for you. Watch now, just 60 seconds that might change how you see yourself forever. The envelope glinted like something stolen. Golden, glossy, arrogant. It didn't belong among the stack of ordinary things. Bills overdue, a grocery flyer, a pink reminder from the electricity company with the word final, bleeding red across the top. But there it was, bold as sin, resting on top like it knew she'd stop breathing the moment she saw it. Amali's hands stilled, her fingers, calloused from years of chopping onions and scrubbing greasy pans, hovered just above the paper. The morning air held that sharp, tinny scent of rain about to fall. Behind her, the old radio mumbled soft jazz inside the small kitchen of her restaurant, where steam curled from a pot of pepper stew. But in that moment, even the hiss of oil and rhythm of life paused for the silence coiled around her. The envelope felt heavier than it should, embossed with delicate vines, the kind you'd find at a state banquet or on royal parchment. She turned it over, breath held like a secret. The wax seal cracked with a soft, accusing snap. Inside, an invitation. Wedding of the year. You are cordially invited to the celebration of Kato Mbeki and Naledi Kumalo. Date, venue, dress code. And then, like a wound reopened, the last line in bold cursive. Seat of honor, reserved for you. Her vision blurred. She blinked, but the letters didn't change. Neither did the name. Not a prank, not a mistake, not a wrong address. Her name was written in gold ink on the back flap, Amali Masimang. She sat down hard onto the nearest stool. The legs screeched across the tile. Her apron, stained with turmeric and the soft ghost of palm oil, bunched at her lap. Her hands trembled, knuckles pale. 3 years. That's how long it had been since she last saw Cato. Since the rainstorm, since the slammed door, since she walked into the night with nothing but a canvas bag and the sound of her heartbeat threatening to break her ribs. She had rebuilt everything from ash, her dignity, her business, her silence. And now this? The air thickened around her. The kitchen clock ticked louder than it had any right to. Outside the window, school children chased one another past the gates of the dusty market road. A woman bargained for cassava. Normal life continued, unknowing, untouched, but not for her. She rose, envelope still clutched in hand, and walked toward the back door. Her steps were measured, like each one might trigger a landmine. On the porch, the sky was hanging low with clouds the color of bruises. Wind stirred the edges of the invitation. The metallic paper caught the light again, flashing, mocking. Why would he invite her? Why now? Why seat of honor? The man she remembered would rather swallow glass than give her that. And still, she stood there transfixed. The storm of memory began to rise. He had once knelt in front of her, eyes shining, hands trembling with a cheap ring. Before the businesses, before the cameras, before the mother-in-law with the mouth like vinegar. In those first 2 years, he used to draw hearts on napkins, leave notes in her shoes, dance with her in the kitchen. She had memorized the scent behind his ear, the rhythm of his breathing when he dreamt. But all of it rotted. Cato, once her sunrise, had become a storm that didn't end. His voice grew sharp, his touches rare, his ambition turned rabid. Then the word was spoken, barren, not in private, not in sorrow, but spat across a dinner table in front of his mother and 2 cousins. "She's a curse," the woman had said. 7 years and no child. What kind of woman is this? Cato didn't defend her. He didn't speak at all. 2 weeks later, after a night of silence so dense it could have drowned her, she had dropped to her knees in the rain, literally, on the porch, begging, not for love, just to stay, to be allowed to remain in the home she helped build. And he had closed the door, not slowly, not regretfully, but like slamming the lid of a coffin. That image, door slamming, rain pouring, the back of his head disappearing into the warm light of their house, was one she had carried like a photograph inside her ribs, a burning picture she pulled out only when the pain tried to rewrite the past. So what game was this? Amali pressed the invitation against her chest. Its surface felt unnaturally smooth, like something made by machines, untouched by human hands, like the heart of the man who sent it. Unless a sudden knock at the back gate startled her. She turned. It was Musa, the delivery boy from the flower stall across the street. Thin, tall, always slightly sweaty, always smiling. He held up a small paper bag. "Your hibiscus tea, Auntie A," he chirped. She managed a nod, took the bag, passed him a coin. The brief exchange grounded her, reminded her the world hadn't ended. Not yet. When he left, she sat back down on the porch step, opened the bag, and sipped. The tea was scalding, bitter. But it made her feel present, awake. There were 2 options: tear the invitation, burn it, pretend it never arrived, or go. Go and face the monster. Go and sit in that so-called seat of honor while the man who called her barren married someone else in white lace and rose petals. Go and let the world see what he did to her. Go and... She froze. What if he wanted her there not despite her pain, but because of it? What if the seat wasn't about honor at all, but humiliation? Let them see her, the ex-wife, the failure, alone, aging, without a child, without a man. While he stood victorious, flashing a grin, proving he'd moved on to better things. Amali's grip on the envelope tightened. Yes, that felt right. Cato hadn't changed. His cruelty didn't evolve. It metastasized. And this? This was his final stage. Her eyes scanned the lines again. Seat of honor. She almost laughed. The insult was almost poetic. And yet, beneath the anger, beneath the humiliation, something stirred. Not a desire for revenge. Not pride. But something simpler. Truth. She had lived with a scar no one saw, had swallowed the shame, the pitying glances, the whispers behind her back. But what if she could reclaim the narrative? What if she walked in, not as the victim, but as the woman who rose? What if that seat of honor became a throne, not of what he gave her, but what she earned herself? The thought curled around her ribs like warmth. From inside, the soup boiled over. A shrill hiss. She stood up quickly, rushed in, turned the gas low. The scent of cumin and tomato filled the space. She leaned on the counter, breathing deep. Her eyes drifted back to the invitation. Then, almost absently, her fingers traced the edge of the gold foil until a small bead of paper came loose. Something odd beneath the corner. She peeled it gently and paused. Beneath the top layer of the envelope, another paper, hidden, tucked, a handwritten note. Her name at the top, in Cato's handwriting, the one she knew like her own. 3 words. Please don't decline. That was all. No apology. No explanation. Just a plea. She sat back, spine rigid. Why? Why would a man like Cato, proud and polished, write something like that? Why did it sound less like arrogance and more like desperation? She stared at those 3 words for a long time, until the storm outside finally broke, rain lashing against the tin roof in rhythmic fury, the kind of rain that used to make her cry. Now, it just made her quiet. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of 1,000 possible tomorrows. Should she go? What did she really have to lose? What did she have to prove? Lightning flickered behind the window pane. She looked down again at the invitation, then at the hidden note still clutched in her hand. Her lips parted. She whispered, barely audible, even to herself, "Why does he want me there?" And for the first time in 3 years, she didn't know the answer. But she would find out, even if it meant walking straight into the fire, even if it meant burning. Rain hammered the tin roof like fists, relentless, angry. It was night, and the courtyard glistened like black glass under the dim light of a single bulb swinging from a frayed wire. Amali stood barefoot on the wet tiles, her dress soaked through, clinging to her knees like cold hands, her palms pressed together, trembling not from the cold but from something older and heavier. Humiliation, heartbreak, the exhaustion of 7 years of loving someone who had learned to look at her as if she were a stranger. She lifted her face to the closed door. The smell of wet earth rose around her, thick with the faint scent of rotting mangoes from the tree by the gate. Water slid down her temples, mixing with tears she didn't remember letting fall. Her knuckles rapped softly on the wood once, then again harder. No answer. Only the sound of a television inside, voices laughing at something she couldn't hear. She tried the handle, locked. The bulb flickered. The courtyard felt like a stage where she had been left alone to plead for an audience that would never return. Inside, she imagined the warmth she used to belong to, the golden glow of the sitting room, the smell of cloves in the evening stew, the couch where Cato once held her hand and whispered promises that sounded like prayers. Now there was nothing but silence, except for the occasional cough of his mother from the kitchen. The woman's silhouette had been there earlier, framed in the doorway, eyes sharp, lips curled. "It's shameful," she had said hours ago. "A woman without children, a hollow womb, a curse on our name." Amale had swallowed the words like shards of glass. She knocked again, harder this time. "Cato," her voice cracked. "Please, just talk to me. Please don't do this." She wanted to say more, but couldn't. Her throat had turned to stone. Through the door came a single sound, a bolt sliding shut. She pressed her forehead to the wood. She could almost feel his heartbeat on the other side if she tried hard enough. But there was only the dull echo of her own. Lightning flared, and for an instant the courtyard turned white. She saw her reflection in the window, hair plastered to her scalp, eyes rimmed red, the little canvas bag clutched under her arm, the bag she had packed with a few clothes, a chipped photo frame, a small tin of shea butter, everything she could carry, everything left of a life. A voice floated from inside, sharp, cut short. "She will leave tonight," the mother said. "She cannot stay under this roof. We are done with her shame." And then Cato's, low but firm. "It's over, Amali." Just like that, not even her name in full, not the way he used to draw it out, soft like a song. She stepped back. The rain grew heavier, blurring her view of the world. She gripped the bag tighter. Her shoes squelched in the water. The door stayed shut. In the corner of the courtyard, a frog croaked, small and defiant. She thought of the first night she arrived in this house, a bride carrying hope in her arms. She had pressed her palms to these same tiles and thanked God for a home. 7 years later, she was on her knees in the same place, but this time in the dark, the rain biting at her skin. The bulb flickered again and went out. Darkness swallowed her. The sound of the lock sliding again echoed, a final punctuation. She straightened slowly, every movement deliberate. The air smelled of iron, like blood. She turned once more to the door. "You never even checked," she whispered. Her voice was a thread, nearly lost to the storm. "You never even knew." She thought of the doctor's visit she had begged him to make, the tests he had refused. "It's not me," he'd said. "It's you." As if his word was law. as if her body was a crime. In the years that followed, she had carried the verdict in silence, let it hollow her out, let it shape her shadow. Now the house behind the door belonged to someone else. She was already a ghost. She stepped off the porch and onto the mud path leading to the street. Each footfall sank a little. The bag grew heavier. Her dress clung tighter. She didn't look back until she reached the gate. There, under the skeletal branches of the mango tree, she paused. Through the rain, she saw the faint glow from the living room window. 2 figures inside, Cato and his mother, bent over a teacup. No one watching her leave. For a heartbeat, she wanted to shout. Wanted to say she wasn't barren, wasn't cursed, wasn't what they thought. Wanted to throw the bag, to break the window, to force him to see her. But she didn't. Instead, she pushed the gate open. It groaned like an old wound. Beyond it lay the unlit street, empty, except for a stray dog trotting under the rain. She walked. The cold seeped into her bones, but she kept moving. Somewhere deep under the weight of shame, a spark flickered. Not rage, not revenge, something smaller, something that refused to die. If she could survive this night, she would survive anything. She reached the main road. The rain softened to a mist. Streetlights hummed, throwing cones of light on puddles that rippled with each passing car. She stood at the edge, bag in hand, unsure where to go. For a moment she felt the pull to return, to knock once more. But then she heard a sound, the faint chime of church bells from far away. Midnight, a new day. She took a breath and stepped forward. A taxi slowed beside her. The driver leaned out, rain dripping from his cap. Need a ride? His voice was warm, ordinary. She almost laughed at how normal it was. She shook her head. No, thank you. He shrugged and drove on. She walked until her feet ached. Later that night, she found herself sitting on a bench at the bus station. The roof leaked. The bench was cold metal. Around her, a few strangers dozed, curled in coats. A child coughed in his sleep. She placed the bag beside her and wiped her face with the edge of her sleeve. For the first time, she let herself cry without holding back, shoulders shaking, breath coming ragged. When the tears slowed, she opened the bag. Inside was the small tin of shea butter. The photo frame with the wedding picture turned face down. She turned it over. Their faces smiled back at her from another life. Her in a white dress, him in a navy suit, both eyes shining. She stared at it until the image blurred. Then she slipped it back into the bag and zipped it shut. A woman sitting nearby offered her a piece of bread. You look hungry, she said softly. Amali accepted it with a nod, tore off a piece, tasted the dryness, the faint salt. It steadied her. The woman smiled and turned away. No questions, no pity, just kindness. Hours passed. Dawn began to stain the sky a pale gray. The rain stopped. She rose stiff and walked to the edge of the platform. A bus arrived with a hiss of brakes, its lights glaring like eyes. She didn't know where it was going, only that it was away. She climbed aboard, dropped her last coins into the box, and found a seat by the window. The city slipped past, wet and shining. As the bus rumbled through the waking streets, she pressed her forehead to the glass. In her reflection, she saw not the woman left behind, but the woman still standing. She closed her eyes and for a moment let herself imagine a different future. A small apartment, a job, friends, laughter. Her own breath filling her lungs without fear. The bus turned a corner. A hospital sign flashed by. She opened her eyes. Something inside her stirred. An idea, faint but persistent. She had never been tested. Not really. He had never gone. What if everything she believed about herself was a lie he had built? The thought burned through her chest like a match struck in the dark. She sat up straighter, clutching the bag. She didn't know how or when, but she would find out. She would not carry his verdict anymore. She would not let his silence define her body. She would know the truth, even if it broke her. The bus engine roared. She looked back one last time through the window. The house was gone now, hidden by distance and rain. Only the road ahead remained, long and uncertain. But for the first time in years, her steps, though trembling, felt her own. And as the bus rolled into the gray light of morning, she whispered to herself, voice steady against the hum of tires on wet asphalt, "If I survive this, I will prove the truth." The words hung in the air, fragile but unbroken, as if daring the world to challenge them. The hospital corridor smelled faintly of bleach and boiled rice from the canteen downstairs. The walls were the color of faded bone, lined with plastic chairs that creaked when someone shifted. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering every few seconds as if the building itself was breathing unevenly. Amali sat hunched on one of the chairs, her elbows on her knees, the manila envelope on her lap as if it were a fragile animal she didn't dare wake. Rainwater from the street had soaked the hem of her dress. She didn't notice. She had walked here under a low sky, through the market noise and taxi horns, and now everything inside her was quiet but tight, like a drum stretched too far. Across from her, Amari leaned back with her arms folded, a scarf wrapped tightly around her hair. She had always been the one with plans, the one who held herself like a blade. Even in the dim waiting area, she looked alert, eyes darting from the nurse's desk to the double doors of the lab. "You're sure you want to do this?" she asked softly. Her voice carried the same blend of caution and push she used back in university, when Amali was too shy to sign up for internships or speak in class. Amali nodded. Her throat felt dry. "I have to," she said. The words came out cracked but steady. She didn't look up. Her thumb rubbed the edge of the envelope. Her name and hospital ID were written in neat block letters. She had stared at them all the way from the reception, as if by doing so she could hold the truth still. The truth about her body. The truth that might rewrite 7 years of shame. Amari shifted closer. "I told you years ago," she murmured, "but you never wanted to hear it. He should have been tested too. Men always assume—" She let the sentence trail off. There was no need to finish. They both knew what had been assumed, what had been said, what had been believed. Amali closed her eyes. She could still feel the rain from that night at the gate sliding down her back, still hear his mother's voice like a knife. She remembered how she had folded into herself in that bus seat, clutching her bag, thinking she might break apart from the weight of being called barren. And now, here, a simple test could undo or confirm everything. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with no guardrail. A nurse appeared at the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Msimang?" Her tone was professional but gentle. Amale rose, knees unsteady. Amari squeezed her hand once, quick and strong. "I'll wait here," she said. "You go." Inside the lab, it was cooler. The smell of antiseptic was sharp. The walls were pale green. A doctor with a silver streak in his hair smiled faintly as she entered. "Please sit," he said. His accent carried a coastal lilt, calming somehow. He gestured to a chair. "We've completed your tests." She sat. Her palms were damp. The paper gown rustled under her as she shifted. The doctor opened a file, scanning quickly. "Ms. Msimang," he began, "your results are normal." He looked up to meet her eyes. "Your reproductive health is entirely within the expected range for your age. There are no signs of scarring, no hormonal issues, no obstruction. In plain words, you are healthy." For a moment, the words didn't land. They hovered in the air between them, impossible. She blinked. What?" she whispered. The doctor tilted the file toward her, pointing at the numbers, the graphs. "You are not infertile," he said kindly. "There is no evidence you have ever been. Whoever told you otherwise was mistaken." Her chest tightened, not with relief, with something more jagged. All the years she had carried the shame like a second skin. All the times she had lowered her eyes under someone's pity. All the nights she had lain awake beside Cato, wondering what sin she had committed to deserve his silence. It cracked open inside her now like a dam. A small sound escaped her, part laugh, part sob. She pressed a hand to her mouth. The doctor hesitated, then added, "If you were trying to conceive for years with no success, it would be advisable for your partner to be examined as well. Sometimes the issue lies with the male." His tone was neutral, clinical, but the words detonated like fireworks in her skull. She gripped the edge of the chair. "He never," she began, then stopped. She couldn't finish the sentence. The doctor closed the file gently. "You have been carrying a burden that was not yours," he said. "It's a hard thing, but at least now you know." She stood slowly, legs unsteady. "Thank you," she managed. The doctor gave her a small nod and handed her the printout. "Take care of yourself," he said, then turned to his next file. Outside the lab, the corridor seemed brighter, though the lights hadn't changed. Amari stood up at once, reading her face. "Well?" she demanded. Amale held out the paper. Her hand shook. "I'm fine," she whispered. "I'm completely fine." Amari's eyes flickered. She took the paper, scanned it quickly, then let out a long breath. "I knew it," she muttered. "I knew it wasn't you." She grabbed Amali's shoulders. "Do you understand what this means?" Amali did and didn't. The hallway tilted slightly. The years of blame, of whispered insults, of empty nights, they shifted, reassembled, became something else. "All this time," she murmured, "he told everyone." Her knees gave a little. Amari caught her, guided her to a chair. "Breathe," she said. "It's not your fault." Amale sat, the printout crumpled in her hands. Tears slid down her face, hot and unstoppable. But they felt different this time, not the sour tears of humiliation, but something saltier, fresher, like rain washing a street clean. She covered her face. A sound escaped her chest, a low, broken laugh. "I thought I was broken," she said softly. "I thought I was the curse." Amari crouched in front of her, voice low. "You are not a curse. You never were. He built that story. You lived in it, but it was his lie." Amali lowered her hands. Through her tears, she saw the posters on the wall, bright diagrams of healthy hearts, lungs, smiling families. The air smelled of disinfectant and boiled tea. She thought of the seat of honor at the wedding invitation, the gold letters, the hidden note. She thought of Cato's face when he had slammed the door. She thought of the 3 words scrawled on the hidden slip of paper, "Please don't decline." Her stomach turned. Was the wedding invitation really about humiliation? Or was there something else buried under his gesture? Why would a man so proud ask her not to decline? The question glimmered like a knife edge in her mind. Amari touched her arm. "What will you do now?" she asked. Her eyes were sharp but soft. "Will you tell him?" Amali wiped her face with her sleeve. "No," she said quietly, "not yet." She stood, folding the printout carefully and slipping it into her bag. The paper felt like proof of life, proof of innocence, proof of something still possible. She took a deep breath. "First, I have to decide what kind of woman I want to be." They walked out of the hospital together. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air was cool and smelled of wet dust. People bustled past, mothers with children, men with briefcases, vendors with steaming trays of corn. Life went on, unbothered by the truths being unearthed inside a single heart. Amali paused on the steps, looking at the sky. It was no longer gray, but streaked with pale blue. The first sunlight glinted on the puddles, making them look like small mirrors. She saw her reflection in one, her hair damp, her eyes red but clear. She straightened her shoulders. For the first time in years, she didn't feel smaller than the world. Amari squeezed her hand. "Where to?" she asked. Amali didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her bag where the printout rested. The hospital smell still clung to her clothes, but under it she caught the scent of roasted peanuts from a nearby cart. It reminded her of the university canteen where she and Amari used to sit, dreaming of lives bigger than their scholarships. Lives free from other people's verdicts. "I don't know yet," she said finally, "but somewhere forward." They walked toward the taxi stand. Each step felt like a drumbeat. With every movement, the paper inside her bag seemed to whisper against the fabric. You are not what they said. You never were. At the curb, a taxi honked. Amari hailed it. You're shaking, she said as the car pulled up. Do you want to eat first? Amali shook her head. Later. She climbed into the back seat, watching the hospital recede through the window. It looked smaller now, just a building of cement and glass, not the place where her identity had been weighed and measured. The taxi merged into traffic. Banners for the upcoming wedding fluttered on street poles, gold and white. Her chest tightened at the sight. The city hummed around her, unaware of the new knowledge she carried like a heartbeat. As they crossed the bridge over the brown river, Amale pressed her palm flat against the window. The glass was warm from the sun. She closed her eyes. She thought of her body not as an empty vessel, but as a garden waiting for rain. She thought of the spark she had felt that night walking away from the locked door. It was stronger now, almost a flame. She whispered under her breath, so soft Amari didn't hear. I'm not broken. The words tasted like honey and iron. She said it again, louder this time, and a smile flickered at the corner of her mouth. But even as she smiled, a shiver ran through her. If she was not broken, then someone else was. And if Cato knew it, what game was he playing now? The question hung in her mind like a storm cloud on a clear day. The taxi slowed at a red light. Amale opened her eyes and stared at the banners again. Cato's name, Naletti's name, the gold letters. She imagined walking into that wedding hall not as a shadow but as herself, not as a victim but as a living contradiction of his story. She felt both fear and a strange kind of power. The light changed. The taxi rolled on. She leaned back in the seat, clutching her bag with the printout inside, and let the city blur past. Somewhere deep inside, past the ache and the questions, she felt the first tremor of something she hadn't dared in years. Hope. And as the car turned down the road toward her small apartment, she closed her eyes and let the word rise like a prayer she hadn't prayed in a long time. If I'm whole, then everything can change. The thought filled her like breath, leaving her trembling. She didn't know yet what she would do, but she knew she could no longer live as she had before. The taxi's tires hissed on wet asphalt. The city kept moving. And in the back seat, Amale sat with her hands folded over her bag, eyes closed, the faintest smile on her lips, as if she were already seeing a life not yet lived. Under the faded market awning, flames licked the base of the dented pot as steam hissed into the early morning air. Amale stirred the bubbling stew with a long wooden ladle, her wrists slick with sweat and pepper oil. The scent of smoked tomatoes, ginger, and black-eyed peas curled up into the air, drawing flies, then customers, then more customers. Her red headscarf was damp at the edges, tied tight above tired eyes that watched everything. A boy with runny eyes hovered near the table. Amale handed him a small bowl before he could ask. "Eat it slowly," she said, "and tell your grandmother to drink water." The boy nodded barefoot and ran off. The line stretched down the dusty path, curving around the edge of the cloth stalls. Women with baskets, taxi drivers with coins warm from their pockets, workers still yawning into the sun. The pot hissed again, and Amale refilled it without looking. The rhythm of it had become second nature. Simmer, scoop, smile, count, wipe, stir. She didn't look like a woman who had once cried herself to sleep in a hospital waiting room. She didn't look like someone who had once believed her body was a graveyard. No. Now she looked like someone anchored. 3 weeks had passed since the test. 3 weeks of silence from Cato. 3 weeks of her turning his invitation over in her mind, again and again, like a stone she couldn't throw away. But life didn't wait for answers. Rent had to be paid. Firewood had to be chopped. Rice had to be washed. And so she cooked. She sold what she made. And slowly, people started to come back, not just for the food, but for the way she said their names, for the way her hands worked with quiet precision. There was something healing in the way she fed them, something steady. Then he came. It was nearly noon. The sun had clawed its way to the middle of the sky, and Amale was ladling jollof rice into containers when she felt the shift. Not a sound, just the sensation of someone watching. Someone still. He stood behind the last customer, not in line, not waiting, just watching. Tall, lean, wearing a plain white shirt and trousers clean enough to be expensive. A folded paper in one hand, eyes the color of ash, and a sadness that didn't belong to the morning. She didn't speak, neither did he. It wasn't until the line thinned that he stepped forward. His voice was soft, careful. "Do you serve this spicy?" She raised an eyebrow, lips twitching. "Only if you deserve it." That made him smile, just a flicker. "Then I'll take the spiciest you have." She scooped it into a bowl and handed it over. His fingers brushed hers. Dry, cool, calloused. Not the hands of a man who spent time behind a desk. He paid in exact change, then moved to the edge of the stall, sat on an upturned crate, and began to eat. He came again the next day, and the day after, always just after the rush, always alone, always with the same soft-spoken manner. He didn't flirt, he didn't pry, he simply asked for food, then sat and sometimes shared a thought. Once it was about how some foods taste better when eaten with fingers. Another time, about how wind changes direction before a storm, if you listen closely enough. On the fourth day, Amale brought him water without being asked. He sipped, then looked at her. "You used to teach, didn't you?" She stiffened. "How do you know that? You count money like someone who used to handle chalk." She blinked, then laughed. A real laugh, deep and unexpected. "That's the strangest observation I've heard in years." He grinned, then offered his hand. "Jabari," he said. "It means brave. But most days I feel like a coward." She hesitated, then took it. "Amala," she said. "It means the beautiful one. But some days I feel like a shadow." Their hands held a moment longer than necessary. Later that week, she saw him helping the bread seller carry her trays across a flooded alley. The week after, he stayed to help her pack up when the sky turned black with sudden rain. He never asked questions, never pushed, just stood nearby like an answer she hadn't known she was waiting for. It wasn't until the third week that he told her the truth. They were sitting under the awning as the last of the customers drifted away. The sun was setting low, smearing the sky with the color of burnt orange and palm oil. Jabari held a small photograph between two fingers. A woman, smiling, head wrapped in a bright yellow scarf. "This was my wife," he said. "She died 2 years ago. Car accident. Driver ran a red light." Amala said nothing. The photograph fluttered slightly in the breeze. "We built a company together," he added. "Private cars, luxury service. I kept it going after she passed, but not the way she did. She liked the shine. I like quiet." He looked up. "That's why I'm here. Trying to remember how to live among people." Amali looked down at her hands. They were stained with turmeric, her nails chipped. She didn't know what to say, so she passed him a spoon. "Try the stew," she said. "It's new." He did, chewed thoughtfully. "Tastes like memory." She blinked. "What kind of memory?" "The kind you thought you lost, but it was just asleep." They didn't speak for a while after that. When he left, he pressed a folded flyer into her palm. "We're catering a charity gala in 3 weeks," he said. "Short notice, I know, but I recommended your food." His voice was quiet. "You deserve a bigger table." She stared at the flyer after he walked away. Silver lettering, big names, big event. And then she noticed something else. In the fine print, sponsored arrival by Majestic Rides, his company. The memory of the hospital corridor came back to her like a shiver. The nurse, the printout, the doctor's voice. The issue might not be you. And now this man, this stranger, showing up like a quiet storm, gently folding her into another life. She turned the flyer over, a handwritten note at the bottom. "If you need a ride, I have a Rolls-Royce just waiting for a queen." Her cheeks flushed. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her bag. That night, the wind blew strong across the tin roof of her apartment. The stew pot soaked in the sink. The scent of garlic still clung to her clothes. She sat by the window, arms around her knees, looking out at the stars scattered like salt across the sky. She didn't know what this man wanted. She didn't know if the world was playing tricks. But for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Not as a symbol, not as a tragedy, but as a woman who had survived. And something strange stirred inside her. Not love, not yet, but something softer. The space love might one day fill. She reached for the flyer again, touched the corner of the paper like it might dissolve. Outside, the wind carried laughter from the next building. A child cried. A mother hushed them. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn echoed and faded. Amali looked down at her calloused fingers, then up at the sky, and whispered, not to anyone, but to herself. Maybe I'm not done yet. The words tasted like warm soup. They settled into her bones. She didn't cry, she just breathed, deep and slow, like someone preparing to walk through a door that had once been slammed shut. The night stretched long ahead, but now it no longer felt empty. It felt like a road, a beginning, a quiet answer. And in the dark, her lips curved, not into a smile, but into a promise. The room fell silent when the doctor turned the screen toward her. 3 pulsing lights blinked in the darkness like stars in a night sky, steady, delicate, defiant. Amali couldn't breathe. Her hand clutched the edge of the exam table. Her other hand, trembling, rested on her belly. "There they are," the doctor said, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 strong heartbeats. For a moment, Amali thought she misheard. She stared at the image again, her eyes wide, mouth parted. 3? She asked, breath catching in her throat. The doctor nodded gently. "Yes, triplets, all measuring right on time." Her head swam. The air grew thick, heavy with something she didn't yet have words for. She blinked at the screen, as if the image might shift, might vanish, might correct itself. But it didn't. The tiny rhythmic flickers on the monitor continued, oblivious to her awe. A warm tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. She just stared, hands rising slowly to cradle the place below her ribs where life had begun to bloom, multiplied by 3. She didn't feel joy right away, or fear, or shock. She felt silence, the kind that only comes after too many storms, when you've forgotten what it means to trust clear skies. The silence of a woman who had once been told she was nothing but an empty room. The doctor clicked off the machine, stood, and stepped outside to give her a moment. The door closed softly. Amali stayed where she was. The gel still glistened on her skin. She touched it, then touched her chest. Her heartbeat, once dull and slow, now echoed against her ribs like a drum. She thought of the years wasted under Cato's judgment, thought of his mother's words, poison dressed in silk, thought of all the women who had pitied her with tilted heads and whispered prayers. And now, here she was, alone in a small, sunlit room, holding the impossible in her belly. She laughed. It came from deep, ragged, and unsteady, but it rose like water breaking a dam. She pressed both hands to her mouth, laughter trembling into tears. When she stepped outside, the world felt different. The air had shifted. The hallway looked brighter, the nurse's smile warmer, the chatter in the waiting room suddenly like music. She walked outside into the afternoon heat and tilted her face toward the sun. She didn't call anyone. Not yet. She walked home, both palms resting on her belly, as if her body needed to relearn what it meant to carry something worth protecting. When she reached her front steps, Jabari was waiting. He stood beside the entrance with 2 takeaway coffees in hand and a cloth-wrapped parcel under one arm. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes soft. He looked up as she approached and smiled, but when he saw her face, the smile faded into concern. "What happened?" he asked, voice low. Amali shook her head, unable to speak. Her breath hitched. Then she stepped forward, placed one hand gently on his chest, and whispered, "They're 3. He froze. "3, she said again, laughing through a sob. "I'm having 3 children." Jabari's eyes widened, his mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Triplets?" She nodded. Her body trembled. He dropped the coffee. The paper cups hit the ground, dark liquid spreading like ink into the dust, but neither of them moved to pick them up. Jabari pulled her into his arms and held her, not tightly, not like someone saving her, but like someone steady enough to stay. He didn't speak, didn't offer cliches or advice or fear. He just held her, his hand resting on the small of her back, where everything had changed. Later that night, they sat at the small table in her kitchen. The lights dimmed. The parcel he brought opened between them. A cloth bundle of soft bread, grilled tilapia, a container of orange stew. Amale ate slowly, her appetite cautious, her body beginning to understand that it no longer belonged to her alone. Jabari watched her, then cleared his throat. "I had a feeling," he said. "Don't ask me why." She raised an eyebrow. "About the pregnancy?" "No," he said. "About you. That you were fuller than the world allowed you to be. Even before all this." Her eyes shimmered. "I was made to feel like a desert," she whispered. "But it turns out I was just waiting for the rain." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I'd like to be here," he said, "however you'll allow me." She didn't answer right away. She watched their hands on the table, his thumb tracing hers. She thought of how easily people promised presents, how lightly the word stay was used. But Jabari had never rushed her, never tried to fix her. He simply stayed long enough to earn her silence. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "Neither do I," he replied. "But we could learn." A week passed, then 2. The news settled into her like warmth. She stopped hiding her stomach behind aprons, stopped answering every phone call with caution. She still hadn't told Cato. Something in her waited, instinct or something quieter. The food stall flourished, and then came the gala. She wore a soft blue dress Jabari had picked out, loose around her growing belly. Her headscarf was new, golden threads woven in waves. She stood at the corner of the large white tent, arranging trays of steaming rice, suya skewers, and honey-glazed plantains. Lights twinkled overhead. Laughter floated like perfume. Waiters in crisp black vests circled with champagne. Amale kept her hands busy. Her body moved without thinking, even as her heart thudded against her ribs. It wasn't nerves about the guests. It was the car, parked just beyond the tent, a silver Rolls-Royce. Her name wasn't on the guest list, but the catering team had been instructed to provide full access for her, by name, by letter, not as an employee, as someone else. The event ended just past midnight. She stayed to help pack the last crates, thanked the staff, counted every leftover spoon. She worked until her back ached and her feet throbbed. Then she walked toward the car. It sat there, gleaming, windows tinted. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Inside, a single envelope. Cream paper, gold trim. Her name. She took it. Didn't open it. Not yet. She climbed into the car. The seat was soft beneath her. The city lights slid past the windows like stars drifting through water. Jabari sat beside her, quiet. She held the envelope in both hands. "Everything's changing," she murmured. "Yes," he said, "but so are you." She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the glass. In her lap, 3 lives. In her hands, a future not yet written. And just outside the glass, the sound of something beginning. A heartbeat not her own. A rhythm she could finally trust. Tomorrow, she would open the envelope. Tomorrow, she would answer Cato. But tonight, she allowed herself one fragile thing. Peace. The violin swelled just as the groom stepped forward, bathed in golden light that spilled from the chandeliers like melted sunlight. Hundreds of eyes turned toward him, lips parted, hands raised to smartphones and applause. The glass walls of the venue shimmered with candlelight and crystal, reflecting a man who looked every bit the part. Cato Mbeki, wrapped in white silk, tailored to flawlessness, chin high, smile composed. His shoes tapped against the marble floor with the precision of someone who had practiced his steps. And just behind him, a woman in a pearl-encrusted gown adjusted her veil, flawless and glowing. But Cato's eyes kept drifting toward the door. And somewhere behind that door, a different kind of storm was waiting. Outside, the valet team scrambled as a Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up without warning. Its engine purred like a satisfied cat, its silver body gleaming under the lights. The logo shimmered against the night air, and when the driver opened the door, the murmurs began. First one, then another. Then a ripple of hushed whispers moved through the crowd gathered near the entrance. A foot stepped out encased in gold satin, then another. And then she rose. Amale. Her skin glowed bronze under the soft haze of the garden lanterns. Her dress, sunlight spun into fabric, clung at the waist, then flowed like water around her ankles. She stood tall, unflinching, her back straight, belly round. The hush deepened. 3 boys toddled beside her, dressed in matching cream suits, bow ties askew, shoes polished. Each held one of her hands, the third one gripping the hem of her dress with sticky fingers. Their eyes were wide, blinking at the lights, unaware of the tension building like thunder in the distance. The security guards hesitated, but before anyone could act, one of the gala organizers whispered into her earpiece and nodded. "That's her," the woman muttered, "the guest of honor." And just like that, the path opened. Cameras followed. Phones clicked. Gasps, stares, shuffled murmurs, the kind people don't dare say aloud. Amale walked forward, slow and deliberate, as though she were walking not just into a building, but into history. Her fingers tightened around the boy's hands. Her eyes never left the glowing arch at the end of the aisle. She didn't blink. Inside, the pianist faltered on a note. Then silence. Every neck craned. Every breath waited. Cato turned, and the color drained from his face. He took one small step backward, then another. He wasn't ready. He had thought she wouldn't come, or if she did, she would come quietly, in shame, alone, watching from the shadows. But she came like a sunrise. She came with truth stitched into the seams of her dress. Naledi, now frozen mid-step, turned her head slowly toward him. Her brow furrowed. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet. The twins noticed too. 3 of them. 3. All boys. All too old to be explained away. The congregation, executives, influencers, relatives, critics, admirers, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The mood had changed. The perfect illusion had cracked. And Amale kept walking until she reached the center aisle, then stopped. Dead center. Facing him. Cato opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Amale tilted her head. Her smile held no malice, only knowing. Behind her, the triplets giggled, one pointing at the chandelier, another tugging at his brother's sleeve, the third wriggling free to chase a bubble that had floated in from the garden. Still, she said nothing, because she didn't have to. Her presence was louder than thunder. Cato looked at Naledi, her eyes now fixed on him like a blade. She didn't speak either, but the tremor in her fingers gave her away. She was calculating, counting, months, stories, lies. The MC, caught in the moment, tried to clear his throat. Shall we proceed with the vows?" No one answered. Naledi stepped back. The bouquet dropped. One of the triplets bent to pick it up, then handed it to his mother like a prize. Amale looked at the child, then at the crowd, then at Cato. Still no words, but then a slow, deliberate movement. She reached into her clutch, pulled out a sheet of paper, held it up, a test result, the seal visible, the name, the date, the word. Confirmed. Natural conception. No underlying infertility. Female subject, Amale Masimang. Reproductive health within standard parameters. It rippled in the light. Cato stumbled backward. Naledi turned sharply toward him and spoke, loudly, fiercely. "You told me she was barren." His face twitched. "You told me you were fertile, that it was her, that I had nothing to worry about." He said nothing. The silence around them grew brutal. Naledi's voice cracked. "You lied." The gasp from the crowd was collective. Then came the press. Cameras clicked in a frenzy. Socialites rose to whisper. Older aunties muttered prayers. And just as fast as it began, it ended. Naledi walked off the stage, her veil torn, her face pale. She didn't look back. Amala turned to go, not with triumph, but with dignity. She gathered her sons, one on each side, one holding her fingers slightly behind, and she walked back down the aisle, not toward Cato, but toward the exit. The Rolls-Royce waited. She didn't look over her shoulder, not once. Behind her, Cato stood still, like a statue left out in the rain, drenched in consequence, his kingdom falling not with a crash, but with a truth too simple to deny, that he had been the broken one, that the lie had always been his. And now the world knew. As the car door closed behind her and the boys climbed in with sleepy grins, Amali finally exhaled. The wind carried petals into the night. But no one celebrated, because the wedding never happened. And the truth had shown up in gold satin and small shoes. She rested her head against the seat. Jabari looked over from the front, catching her eye through the rearview mirror. "You okay?" he asked. She smiled, but the smile was heavy, tired, real. "They saw," she whispered. They finally saw. The car pulled away from the broken celebration, and for the first time, Amali didn't carry shame on her back. She carried truth in her arms, and it was enough. The silence inside the hall cracked louder than thunder. It came right after Naledi hurled the diamond ring across the polished floor. It clinked once, twice, then spun into a perfect stillness under the wedding arch that now meant nothing. Her hand trembled, her mascara smudged just below one cheekbone. The crowd froze, not out of decorum, but disbelief. Then she said it. "He lied. He told me I couldn't get pregnant because of me. He made me feel small, but he knew. He knew it wasn't me." Her voice didn't rise. It dropped, low, cold, full of shards. All eyes turned back to Cato, who looked like the air had been knocked from his lungs. Amali remained still at the back of the hall, hands resting lightly on the heads of the 3 boys who now sat quietly beside her, unbothered by the chaos of grown-ups and broken ceremonies. Cato tried to speak, failed, tried again. Still nothing. It was as if the language he had once wielded like a blade had suddenly vanished. Naledi turned slowly, removed the lace veil from her head, and let it fall to the floor like shed skin. She stepped off the stage, heels clicking like gavel strikes. No one moved to stop her. She walked past Amali and the children without looking. The doors opened for her, closed behind her, and then came the cameras. Flashing, hungry, merciless. Amahle rose. Cato looked at her then, not with arrogance, not with blame, with something that looked like terror. She stepped forward. 1, 2, 3 measured strides. The lights caught the faint sheen on her cheekbones, the faintest swell of her belly, barely showing, but there. This time she didn't carry a document. She carried presence. She stood before him, not on a stage, not beneath an altar, just eye to eye. "You always thought the truth would kill your image," she said quietly. "Not for the crowd, not for the cameras, just for him. But it didn't. You did." Cato's lips parted. "Amala, I didn't know how—" "Stop." He did. Behind them, someone gasped as a tablet screen refreshed. The news had already broken. Designer bride walks out mid-wedding after infertility lie exposed. Triplets with ex-wife, scandal unfolds during luxury wedding. The headlines spiraled. The empire cracked. And Cato looked smaller than he ever had. Then the main door opened again. A man in a crisp gray suit, thick glasses, and a small brown envelope stepped inside. He walked with the certainty of someone with purpose, the way lawyers do. A hush fell again. He reached the front row, stopped, cleared his throat. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, looking directly at Cato, "but these results arrived this morning. You asked for confirmation." He extended the envelope. Cato didn't move. Amala didn't blink. The man handed it to the MC instead, who opened it slowly, confused. Then he looked up and his face went pale. "Medical report confirms male infertility due to untreated infection. Long-term prognosis, permanent." The room shifted. Cato took the paper, stared at it. His eyes twitched, as if the letters themselves betrayed him. Amali turned to leave, but his voice followed her, shaky, low. "I didn't mean to ruin everything." She paused, turned slightly. "Didn't you?" The children ran ahead, unbothered, already reaching for the platter of sweets a server had abandoned on a side table. The mother followed, slow, steady. Outside, the press gathered like bees to nectar. But Amali didn't flinch. She stepped into the sun, her dress catching the gold, her skin radiant, the boys laughing as they darted through the crowd, unaware that their very existence had cracked open a lie too long fed. Jabari was waiting beside the Rolls-Royce. He opened the door. Amali stopped just before entering. She looked back, not at the cameras, not at the crowd, but at the man she had once called home, and he looked back at her like someone watching a miracle walk away. Only this time it wasn't leaving in rain or with tears. It was walking in truth and in 3 small pairs of footsteps. Just before she entered the car, a reporter shoved forward, mic raised. "Amali, one question. What do you want the world to know?" She met the reporter's eyes, then said softly, "That dignity cannot be stolen, only surrendered, and I'm done surrendering." She stepped inside. The door closed. The car pulled away. But even as it did, the whisper spread, from guest to guest, from screen to screen, that the girl who had once left with a broken heart now walked with 3 reasons to rise. And behind her, Cato stood alone beneath a canopy of flowers, while the petals began to fall, not in celebration, but in ruin. And the world watched, and the truth settled in. The knock came at dusk. 3 slow raps against the wooden gate, steady, deliberate, as if the man on the other side already knew she was expecting him. Amali didn't move at first. She stood by the kitchen window, a ladle in one hand, steam rising from the soup pot behind her, its scent heavy with smoked fish and garlic. The boys were in the living room, their laughter echoing under the low hum of the ceiling fan. Jabari was stacking books in the new corner shelf, humming softly to a forgotten tune. The knock came again. Amali wiped her hands on her apron, crossed the small yard, and opened the gate. Cato stood there, thinner than she remembered, suit wrinkled, tie undone, the same man, but now dulled at the edges. His eyes carried exhaustion that no sleep could fix, the kind born from shame. In one hand, he held a manila envelope. In the other, nothing. He had come with no gift, no pride. 5 minutes, he said. She stepped aside. In the kitchen, the air thickened. Jabari looked up as Cato entered. There was no animosity in his face, only a calm readiness. The kind that comes from knowing you're not here to win, only to witness. Amali gestured toward the back patio. Cato followed her out. They sat. The sky behind them faded into bruised purples and soft rust. Crickets had begun their song. From inside, the clatter of blocks, the burst of childish giggles, the safety of things that mattered. Cato didn't speak for a long time. He held the envelope on his lap like it might disappear. Then, finally, "I got the test redone." She didn't respond. He slid the envelope across the table. She didn't open it. "I knew before the wedding," he said. "I'd known for years, if I'm honest, but I convinced myself it couldn't be, that it wasn't me." His hands shook. "I let my mother speak for me, let my silence ruin you." Amali looked up then. Her face was still, but her eyes held the weight of every night she'd cried in silence. Every morning she had fed her body guilt like breakfast. "I told Naliti the truth," he continued. "She's left the country, canceled all contracts. The fashion house dropped me as a sponsor. The press..." He laughed, bitter. "I'm a meme now." "You came here for pity?" she asked. "No," he said. "I came for forgiveness." She turned away. The wind carried the scent of rain, soft and wet. The boys laughed again, one of them calling her name between squeals. "I don't hate you, Cato," she said finally. "I did for a long time, but hate is a leash. I'm free now." He looked at her like a man begging for a second chance. "Then could we ever be—" "No," she said it gently, but firmly. "You're not the man I built a life with. That man died the night he closed the door in my face." He nodded. Tears welled. He didn't wipe them. "I'll sign whatever you need," he said. "If you want to keep the boys from my name, I understand. If you want nothing from me, You're not on their birth certificates," she said. "They don't carry your name, and they won't." He bowed his head. then reached into his pocket. He pulled out something small wrapped in cloth, laid it on the table. When Amali unwrapped it, her breath caught. It was the bracelet, the one she had left behind in their old house. Brass, shaped like a twisted vine, its edges worn smooth from years of wear, a gift from her mother. She hadn't seen it since that night. "You kept it," she whispered. "I didn't deserve to," he said, "but I did." She traced the curve with one finger, then pushed it back toward him. "It's not mine anymore," she said. "It belongs to who I was, and I'm not her now." He stood, slowly, as if every joint had to relearn motion. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking, "for everything." She nodded, and he walked away, out the gate, into the night. Amali didn't watch him go. She stood under the porch light for a while, hand on her belly, the new child not yet born, but already woven into the shape of her tomorrow. Inside, Jabari met her with a quiet gaze. He didn't ask what had been said. He simply took her hand. Later that week, the restaurant reopened its second branch. Jabari cut the ribbon. Amali stood beside him, radiant, one of the boys holding each hand, the third clinging to the hem of her dress. The community came in droves. Some brought flowers. Some brought gifts. One woman came with her head bowed, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "You gave me strength to leave." That night, Amale sat in the back room watching the door swing open and close. Then she turned to Jabari. "I want to start a fund," she said. "For what?" "For women like me. Women who've been told their bodies are broken, who've been blamed and shamed and forgotten." He nodded, and she smiled. A month later, the Bloom Foundation was born. The first workshop welcomed 15 women. They came with quiet eyes and tired hands, but left with laughter on their breath and pamphlets in their bags. Amale gave each of them a seed, real seeds, wrapped in cloth. "You don't owe the world fruit," she told them. "You owe yourself soil and time and light." They planted them, and waited, and hoped, just like she once had. Months passed. The triplets grew. Their laughter filled every crack in the house. Jabari proposed under a tamarind tree, not with a ring, but with a soft promise whispered against her cheek. "I won't fix you," he said. "Just walk beside you." She said yes. The wedding was small, under an open sky, with no veils, no lies, just truth and music and children running barefoot. And when the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the earth, Amali stood barefoot in the grass, watching the boys chase fireflies. Her hand brushed the curve of her belly, and her heart beat steady. Not with revenge, not with pride, but with peace. The kind no one could steal. The kind born from walking through fire and still finding enough breath to sing. She looked up at the sky and whispered, not to anyone, but to the girl she once was, kneeling in the rain outside a locked door. "You made it." And the wind, soft and warm, carried that truth across the field into the night, into the future, into the bloom. There are some stories that do not roar with grand gestures, but instead move quietly, step by step, through the shadows of rejection, the weight of silence, the ache of being misunderstood. This was one of them, a journey not of spectacle, but of survival, of rising without noise, of reclaiming what was stolen, not in fury, but with truth. In a world that often mistakes power for volume, this story reminds us that strength is sometimes a soft voice that says, "I am still here," after everything tried to erase it. That dignity is not something others grant us, but something we uncover within ourselves, layer by layer, scar by scar. It's easy to believe that brokenness defines us, that the world's verdicts are final. But the beauty of life lies in its quiet rebellions, the single breath taken when hope seemed lost, the trembling step toward a future we were told we didn't deserve, the unexpected kindness that arrives like rain after drought. Healing is not loud, it is not linear, it is the gentle unfolding of a soul learning that it never needed to prove its worth in the first place. That love, real love, does not shrink us or shame us, but sees us exactly as we are, and stays. And perhaps the most powerful truth is this: we are allowed to begin again, not as who we once were, but as who we choose to become. Not bound to the lies spoken over us, but rooted in the truth we finally dare to believe. Thank you for walking this journey with us. If this story touched you, if it stirred something within you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how it made you feel. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the soul. Your support helps us continue to create the kind of narratives that matter. Until next time, may your own story bloom in truth, in light, and in the quiet kind of strength that changes everything.